Ooh, this is exotic. Muscle Cat Media. Nice. Cultural.
Weekend Pickoff time here on the Baseball Expats, and it's a very special weekend. Our man Spoon is entering his 30s tomorrow, which
Today.
is a big today. Well, happy birthday, Spoon. Look, the celebration's happening tomorrow, and I, for one, am very jealous that I'm not in South Australia. But Spoon, I will start with you. Happy birthday, my friend.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it very much.
You could have been in South Australia, though.
I know. Look, I want to say that, like, I woke up on my 30th birthday with, like, lower back pain, and it was like a really quick entry into proper adulthood. Do you have any niggles that aren't self-inflicted today, Spoon, or have you caught any in the last week or so?
It's a good question.
No, but I feel like I can maybe now no longer tell the stories that if I didn't have these career-ending injuries, I would have been a big leaguer. I feel like by the time you're 30, you probably run out of leash on those pub chats. So I might have to pivot into something slightly more believable. I don't know what that is yet.
Something slightly more boring and long-winded and more dipnosophist based for table talk.
I was going to be an aviation expert.
Yeah, by the time you turn 30, it's almost like the path that you've set for yourself is the path that you end up on. How much do we sound like old geezers? Good grief. Eric, I will ask you this question. Hello to you.
Hello.
Do you have a most memorable birthday that you can remember?
I've got two good ones, I suppose.
Two?
Yeah. One I will always stand out is on my 21st birthday. I went to a Buffalo Bills game on my actual birthday, which is a big deal because, you can drink before then in Canada, but 21 is the drinking age in the United States. So I was very excited to be able to buy a beer at the place I grew up going to, a Bills stadium. Now, in the Buffalo Bills Tom Brady era, let me actually just get the stat. Because Tom Brady owned the Buffalo Bills, right? He had a 33-3 record versus the Buffalo Bills in his career, which is incredible considering he played them 2 times a year. But I was at a game on my 21st birthday where the Buffalo Bills went 3-0, and it was the only time the Buffalo Bills beat Tom Brady in Orchard Park. And it was that crazy Ryan Fitzpatrick game. He went insane. Brady threw 4 interceptions. It was my 21st birthday. I was ordering beers from the stadium. It was freaking awesome. So that was a memorable one. And then a couple years ago, I was back home, and it was the first time I brought my partner at the time back home. Well, she's still my partner, but it was the first time I brought her home.
That was going to be my next question.
It's still Sarah. She was my partner at the time. She's my partner at my time now. So
I used to drink a lot of beer. I still do, but I used to as well.
I used to as well. Yeah, exactly.
I used to tell bad jokes.
But no, it was great. We had a barbecue at my dad's place, backyard. It was awesome. All these friends and different people came there. There was like 25 people there. It was in the late afternoon. It wasn't a rager. But what happened after was the memorable one, because it turns out it was a COVID super spreader event where like literally 21 of the 25 people at this party ended up having COVID, including Sarah and myself. It was the only time we caught COVID in this pandemic. And it was after the pandemic had ended, right? Like we went through the whole process without ever getting it. And then we were both so sick on the long haul plane back. And then we ended up having these concert tickets that we were so excited for. We bought them like 7 months before then. We couldn't even go to these concerts because we were back. We got back from our trip back home to Canada, and it was all because of my birthday super spreader COVID event. And we were outside. We were social distancing and everything. But yeah, that was kind of fun, where literally like the group chat was blowing up. Everyone's like, does anyone else have a fever of 100 and can't cough? COVID test. We're like, oh.
Well, hopefully that's not a sign of what's to come in South Australia this weekend.
Oh, if there was ever going to be a super spreader event, I feel like Spoon's birthday festivities on Saturday night would be right in the middle of the of that.
Yeah, look, I hope my 30th is going to end up topping the list, and Port Adelaide getting a win tonight would go a long way. Mine easily would be my 23rd birthday. Woke up at 4 a.m. to watch Liverpool do the impossible against Barcelona, come back from 3-0 in the first leg to win 4-zip. Probably, like, good things don't happen to my teams very often, so it's a short list. But for that to happen on a birthday and be that unbelievable and against the odds and going up against the likes of Messi was pretty special. And then they went on to win the whole thing a year after I went to the Champions League final and lost. Obviously, if I went to that final, we wouldn't have beaten the Spurs, but that's how it goes sometimes.
How about Tottenham? Want to give them a shout out?
Did they deserve one?
Well, they just jumped out of relegation.
They survived. Well, they may survive.
Shout out to Harrogate Town, actually. Friend of the podcast, Sam Fenner, lives in Harrogate. I believe they're getting demoted from League 2 into whatever league exists below that. So,
National League football. Championship.
I have to believe you. There's no way for me to. There's no way to even look it up. I'm not sure that it exists on the internet. What's
home of the Yeovil Glovers, my second team.
I will say I have a very distinct baseball memory from my birthday. I want to say it was 2017, World Baseball Classic. Australia, Japan were tied, and Alex Wells gave up a go-ahead home run to
Lockie Wells.
Sutsugo. Oh yeah, it was Lockie Wells.
The best pitcher in the KBO, by the way.
He is. He's having a hell of a time. That's a great way of bringing it back to where we are currently. Look, there's a few things I want to talk about before we get to Spoon's tips and ultimately his birthday festivities. But the last couple shows, we were talking about the bad juju that has come from the baseball expats. And look, there was some mixed juju, I guess you can say, this past week. Of all people that were going to get a mention and then have something bad happen to them, I don't know that Angel Zerpa would have been on that list on bingo card that I would have had to start last week. But lo and behold, Angel Zerpa found his way on our theme team early in the week. And didn't we wake up to the news on Wednesday morning that Zerpa was out for the season with Tommy John? It looked like the string was just going to continue. But Spoon, we have gotten some good news from guys that we've been talking about in the last couple of days.
Yeah, Mizorowski is going to make his start tomorrow against the Yankees. I'm really excited for that because outside of the death of Sterling, I think the Mizorowski one was pretty heartbreaking. I mean, streaks were always going to end, but I thought we'd taken out one of the best pitchers in baseball. Is it a stretch or a leap too far in logic to say that if Ryan Zimmerman was still in the major leagues, Zerpa's arm would still be attached? Because we would take a different Zed. We wouldn't have even mentioned the guy, and therefore the curse wouldn't have prematurely ended his 2026 season. That's kind of the stuff that keeps me up at night.
We did, to the reverse of that, manage to get Ryan Zefferjohn a save during the week.
Very convincing.
I believe he loaded the bases.
Yeah, and Edgar Cuera, catcher of the best team of all time, came up and grounded out softly. Someone had to lose. Someone had to win.
It was so odd. Like the two guys that never should have been on a theme team, but were solely because of the letter that their last name starts with, found themselves going head to head in I think it was a 1-run game, 2-run game, whatever it was.
Bases loaded, 2 out.
Bases loaded, 2 outs in the 9th inning. And Spoon almost in live time was like, what's going to be the funniest result here? Like a pitcher error to lose or something. So that like Kiro doesn't get a base hit, but somehow is the hero. And it's just really like, it's much ado about nothing. Guys don't know whether to celebrate or commiserate. Like that would have been the icing on the cake, but it was a lazy ground ball that ended up ending it. But good grief, what a time to be alive that somehow those two guys ended up facing each other the next day. We have powers. I don't know if we're using them for good or for evil. I haven't really determined that yet, but I think we can safely say that we have powers.
We also know that you can't screw with these powers, right? Because I tried to use these powers to my own advantage and I literally came into the show and was like, boys, please talk up the Tampa Bay Rays so we can put the jinx on them, right? Like we acknowledged completely what we were trying to do. It was completely intentional. I wanted you to hype up the Tampa Bay Rays. So we used these powers to put the mocha on them, and they could struggle versus the Toronto Blue Jays, and then they swept the Toronto Blue Jays. So if anything, that proves the powers even more, and it also teaches us a lesson that we cannot use these powers against our will kind of thing.
I woke up with a pit in my stomach because I checked the box score of that Jays-Rays game, and McClanahan went 63 pitches or 67 pitches, and I was like, we have done the worst thing possible. But turns out he's just on an incredibly short leash, and I think one base runner got on in a close game, and they just pulled him after a pretty decent start. But yeah, 67 pitches, I saw that, and I was like, the one deal was please don't mention Shane if we're going to talk Rays, and I thought we'd done him in as well. But so far, so good.
Well, if you remember, you gave Eric specific instructions to not mention him by name, and it was Eric that mentioned him by name. So maybe it is just you and I that have the powers. Look, I watched a bit of that Rays Red Sox game earlier today, just because it was on ESPN before the Cardinals Padres game came on. A guy that I don't feel like is getting enough attention for just how good that he's been this season is Chandler Simpson. Like, I'm not sure that many people thought that he was going to amount to anything, right? He was just a fast base runner.
Not true.
Really, but I mean, look, we've seen guys like this come up before. Like, he's always been a great contact guy, but guys that are that quick, it never, like, name me one guy that has worked out in the last 10, 15 years of these super fast guys that are just, that stay up because of their speed and not able to hit the ball.
On our very, very first show, we had Michael Clare come here and say the words, Chandler Simpson is going to
Well, we saw him in the
be a
Premier
star.
12. I mean, I knew that he could play, but like Billy Hamilton was supposed to be the next best thing. And like Billy Hamilton had a decent big league career, but not to the point to where I don't think was impactful as Chandler Simpson has been for Tampa Bay. I don't think anybody expected him to be this good.
His percentile rankings are just insane. Like, listen to this: barrel rate first percentile, hard rate first percentile, bat speed first percentile, but then squared up 96th percentile, whiff rate 99th percentile, K rate 97th percentile.
It's insane.
Obviously, sprint speed is top 3. Like,
And he's
he
so
can't
fast.
hit the ball hard, but he can hit it in the perfect spot, and then that seems to do enough because you can call it BABIP luck, but his BABIP is always going to be great because of how fast he is, and he can beat out pretty much anything, swing, bunts, whatever it is.
Yeah, and his OPS will always inflate because he stretches singles into doubles and doubles into triples.
And he's got 6 outs above average, which is 98th percentile. So the glove's doing a bit of work there too, rather than just being a one tool guy with the speed.
Yeah, you're right. That's superstar.
Yeah,
status.
like, well, that's what I mean. The numbers are like, it just doesn't. You're right. I'm looking at this now. It doesn't make any sense. Like, is expected on base, is bat speed, is what, like, his walk percentage. I mean, I guess he could probably stand to be a little bit more patient, but you're right. It just seems like whatever he's worked on, it's getting barrel to the ball to make sure that he puts the ball in play, because as soon as he does, defenses are always going to scramble. Like, I mean, we've seen him several times this year turn routine ground balls into infield singles. And like Billy Hamilton was doing that when he first came up, right? So I think that's probably a lot of the trepidation that people had early with Simpson, is they were like, oh, he's just going to be another Billy Hamilton. But he's proven he's much better than that.
He's like Luis Ariz mixed with like an Ellie De La Cruz, right? Like the contact ability mixed with the speed. There's no player like this in baseball at all right now. Like, Luis Ariz is the closest comp just as far as in the box, but then you add that speed and it really does add a lot of utility, and that's clearly translating into his fielding percentage and his defensive WAR as well.
If he continues to do this, because we know that guys that are good in Tampa don't stay in Tampa for very long, what happens to a guy like Simpson? Because he's not your prototypical player that you would go out and get. Like, he has to fit a team, I would think. Not every team would want to take a chance on a guy like Simpson or pay a guy like Simpson when it comes time to do it. But if he continues to do this, what's his value? Do you know what I mean? Is he the type of guy that maybe stays in Tampa because he's not going to be the type of guy that earns $20 million a season based on the way that he plays? He's just so interesting because, I mean, you're right. You said it there, Spoon. There's nobody else like him. It's hard to compare him to any single player.
He's the perfect team for a guy for a team that hits a lot of home runs, right? Like the Yankees, the Mariners, those kind of teams where it's like, all right, we're going to put you up top, and then after is like a Raleigh or a Judge, whatever it takes, bunt, infield, single. We don't really care because we're going to turn solo shots into 2-run shots. He hasn't hit a home run in his career. Is he going to? If I set a line of over under 3.5 home runs this season, which way are you playing?
Well, yeah, it's probably.
Does he hit an inside the Parker before he hits one into the stand? Probably.
I think that feels likely.
Did he hit any in the minors? I would pull up Baseball Reference, but it tends to break.
I don't want to do that to your computer. Let's have a look.
He in the minors. Let's say, I'm looking right now as well. He He hit a home run in 2024.
I've got to think
One
that's
home.
an inside the Parker.
And that's
one
it.
in 2022 in college, like 2 in his career.
And at Georgia Tech, which is a pretty hitter-friendly ballpark, too.
Yeah, there's probably a story there, right? Like 2 outfielders ran into each other, both dropped down, and he rounded the bases. It feels
So there's
much
an
more likely
article
than-
from Major League Baseball that was written on the 22nd of March this year where Simpson hit a home run in spring training, and it was the first ball he's ever hit over the fence in his career. So those
Okay,
home
wow.
runs that he's hit in actual games tells me that they must have been inside the Parkers. So he did it in spring training.
It actually seems low that he's only hit 2 inside the Parkers, right? With like speed like that. I mean, you can see big boys get into a couple of inside the Parkers just purely from like weird caroms and outfield walls and all that kind of stuff. Could be a matter of time. If we can get a market for any time Chandler Simpson inside the Parker at like 21s, maybe that's our avalanche for the next month.
I like this. It's weird though, right? Like he's got only 7 walks this year in 36 games. Pretty low walk rate.
It's clear that, and I mean, look, I think every guy that's ever managed him has said it's exactly what Michael Clare said to us last year. You're right. It's like we're not going to try and change this guy. The reason he's gotten to where he is because of who he is. It's just trying to figure out where he fits and how he fits because he's just so different to your prototypical baseball player.
Rollsy's gone all rowboat voice on us again, Spoon.
We got to ban the man from going to Baseball Reference, no matter how badly he needs a stat. Like we can look it up. Like Joe Rogan podcast, Jamie pull that up.
Jamie, pull it up. We should definitely need to do this. I'm guessing he was on Baseball Reference. For those following at home, we've now discovered that anytime Rollsy goes to Baseball Reference, it sewers his computer, which is a bad thing to happen if your job is quite literally to commentate baseball games where you're trying to bring up like stats and numbers on the fly, being like Chandler Simpson up to bat. Wonder what his batting average was back in 2022.
Bear with me while I defrost and I'll tell you his slugging percentage.
Umpire, pause the game, please. I need to look up what Dylan Unsworth ERA was at the 2016 World Baseball Classic qualifiers in Sydney, please.
I guess when you're like, so he's 99th percentile whiff rate. So when he swings, he's hitting it, but he's 34th percentile chase rate. So he's obviously swinging at a lot of pitches outside the zone and still making contact with them, fouling them off. Doesn't strike out at all. He's 97th percentile K rate. So yeah, I mean, it does remind me a lot of watching Luis Ariz, right? Like they always say like the at-bat starts, and even Soto to an extent, the at-bat starts when he gets to 2 strikes and he's kind of happy to take a pitch or two anyway. And then if you're 96th percentile squared up, it is kind of a matter of time till he gets a hold of a pitch.
There's probably something to be said for a self-aware baseball player. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like
you know your skill set.
You know your skill set. And then just like even being able to coach them probably
but
helps.
XBA purely looks at like where you hit it, right? Because his actual batting average is 313. His expected batting average is 268. I mean, that's almost saying that there's a 50-point jump purely in his speed.
Yep. Yeah.
What's there to be said about a self-aware podcaster who needs to stop visiting the website?
Oh, we already sewered you. Don't worry. Welcome back to the show.
Okay. This is like when Eric joins the show for the first time in 3 weeks and just talks about reiterating what was already said for the last 2 minutes.
Yeah. Has anyone heard of Aaron Judge? This guy looks like he could hit some bombs.
He's pretty good. We want to talk about Judge?
This kid.
Well, but actually, before we came on, Spoon and I were just mentioning Spencer Jones, who's been called up by the Yankees. I wasn't sure if Spoon had seen him, but he's 6'7", 240 pounds at 23 years of age. Dominguez got hurt, so they're calling this kid up, who's I think got an OPS of like 1,000, has hit 11 home runs in 33 games in AAA this year. It's like, do the Yankees need another one of these mashing home run bots? Like, is that what we want to see?
No one wants to
Look
see
him
that.
up because I can't. Spencer Jones, he's a real guy.
6th ranked prospect in the org, 24 years of age. Yeah, wow, 6'7". Their second prospect is a pitcher who's also 6'7". These dudes are jacked and huge. It's not a bad scouting philosophy. That kid's massive. Get him in the farm.
So now that you're 30, Spoon, you're saying that that's your excuse to not being a pro athlete. My excuse to not being a pro athlete is that I'm precisely 16 inches shorter than
Yeah.
the number 6 prospect in the Yankees organization.
This is a crazy scouting grade. 35 graded hit tool. That's out of 80 for those who don't routinely check this stuff like a sicko. And then a 65 grade power tool. Like this is going to be Stanton 2.0, right? Like he's just swinging, and if he hits, it's gone. But I think it's going to be really interesting to watch how he goes against big league pitching, because when people figure out you swing like Javi Baez, you're not going to see a lot of strikes.
Well, I would imagine that Jordan Walker's grade probably wasn't too dissimilar to that when he was coming up with St. Louis. I mean, we've seen the renaissance that we've talked about with Jordan Walker this year, and the fact that he's gotten back to his old self, and the contact rate is actually getting a little bit higher. But I mean, his hit tool was probably 35, 45 when he was in the minors, and his power tool was a lot higher. So, but I mean, that's baseball, right? That's the new age of baseball with the 3 true outcomes is you hit a home run 50 times and you strike out 100, teams are happy to take that.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of 65 power hit tools, even if you look at like the top 10 or top 20 in all of baseball. Like they've given Connor Griffin a 65 power tool, but DeVries has a 55. Colt Emerson, the top prospect of the Mariners, 50. Max Clark, the Tigers prospect, 50. Yeah, I mean, 65 is pretty high. I'm trying to think of someone I've seen in the last few years with something higher than that. So he's going to hit some balls a long way, especially as a lefty. That short porch, it's not going to take much.
Rollsy, before we get to Spoon's picks, before the show, and I'll find out some data for next week's show, you were asking about that line we talked about last year of when teams are cemented in a playoff spot, right? Like when do the races go over? And we talked about it being the end of May, and we're 2.5 weeks from the end of May. I was just looking it up on May 31st last year, just so you know, for our little pre-warning to our listeners. 5 of the 6 teams that were in a playoff spot at the end of May in the AL made the playoffs. The one team that didn't was Minnesota, and the Jays sort of took their place and went to the World Series. And 4 of the 6 teams that were in a playoff spot in the NL made it. The 2 teams that dropped out, one had a fairly historic collapse down the stretch, which was the New York Mets. And they're sort of an aberration to this, right? Like the Mets were so bad, and they barely missed the playoffs down the stretch. So unless you're counting on a historic collapse, and the other one was the St. Louis Cardinals were in a playoff spot at the end of May. So there you go. We'll do a deep dive on this before. By the way, it was Cincinnati that snuck in and Milwaukee that snuck in the playoffs, and they went on an absolute tear. So there's your little precursor about, is your team screwed right now if you're not in a playoff spot? Probably is the answer.
You should almost always put like the exception to the Milwaukee Brewers in any of those, because it's like death, taxes, and the Brewers in the playoffs for the last 10 plus years. Every time we look at that team, we're like, I don't know. They haven't really added anyone. They've traded away a couple of pieces. They just keep retooling. They develop prospects well. It doesn't seem to matter whether they have a strong first half or a strong second half. They're there. And for a long time, there was that weird run where the team that beat the Brewers in the playoffs would always win the National League. And that went back to even when the D-backs knocked them out a few years ago in the first round and then went on to sweep the Dodgers. It was like the National League has ran through Milwaukee for some time.
That happened last year as well.
Yeah. If they're not in one of those spots and you're not in one of those spots, you're in trouble, because the Brewers are probably going to get theirs.
Yeah, and if they can just get some things to settle. I mean, obviously Mizorowski coming back from Milwaukee is going to be a big one if he can continue to stay healthy. You're right. It just always feels like that team is in it. I mean, they're 19-16 at the moment, right? So it's not like they're out of it. But the NL Central is crazy, and that's probably going to even out at some point. But yeah, Eric's right. We'll have a look at that early next week, and just sort of look at some teams that we think might fall out and might jump in, because as Eric said, it's actually scary how, if you're in a playoff spot this time of year, how close it is to the actual playoff field coming into.
You're right, Spoon. I'm going through it right now. 6 of the last 8 years, the NL winner has gone through the Brewers in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's like it was just a real thing. It didn't matter whether they were a wild card team or they won the Central. It was just like if you met them in the first round and got through. I mean, even go back to, remember when was it Trent Grisham in right field when it was a wild card game, I reckon, Nationals versus Brewers. And Soto had like his big moment where he unloaded the bases and like Grisham misplayed it and Soto got thrown out trying to get to third, but he was like celebrating as he got thrown out. Then the Nationals went on to win the whole thing in 2019.
Yeah.
God,
Anyways,
that feels like such a long time ago, doesn't it? 2019.
Yeah.
You say that feels like that was 20 years ago. Anyways, look, let's have a look ahead at some games this weekend. Spoon going to try and add a couple of birthday bucks. What he doesn't get in cards from the many people that are commuting to celebrate Spoon's 30th this weekend, he'll try to take it from the bookies. So the first game that we're going to start in tomorrow, Astros Reds, and you were looking forward to, I believe, the season debut of one Nick Lodolo.
Yeah, that's correct. It's really interesting tomorrow, especially when some of these teams aren't from the same division. But looking at the matchups tomorrow, there's a lot of teams where the starter's making their second start against a team from outside their division. So an example of that is Detmers versus Cease from the Angels and Jays. They matched up only, I think, 10 days ago. I usually like to stick away from those because I think teams do make an adjustment, and there's a little bit more on that later for my second play. I mean, even Luzardo against the Rockies, I think he got like 11 strikeouts against them at Coors, but I wanted to stay away from that because I just feel like it's always advantage hitter when they've seen the guy in the last few weeks. So yeah, instead, I'm really keen to see Nick Lodolo. He's one of those guys, when we talked about Chase Burns at the start of the year and, was he going to have a role in this rotation? He was kind of relying on an injury or two. That ended up happening. I mean, Nick Lodolo hasn't started. Hunter Green hasn't started. And it turns out Chase Burns is as good as they always expected. And fortunately for me and for the Reds, he's gotten his opportunity. So I don't think his rotation spot is in doubt. But this Cincinnati team's been quite solid, albeit they've got walked off 3 times in a row at Wrigley. And, they've come away being swept in a series they arguably could have swept themselves. I love the matchup against the Astros tomorrow. I mean, it is painful right now in Houston. I don't know, Eric sent through the clip of Altuve trying to swing with an Altuve against that Ohtani sweeper. Like they are, if you look at the last 3 games, they are the worst. By
Did you
far,
see the horizontal break
team
on that pitch is the most of any pitch ever recorded?
Yeah, and you see the overlay with the 101 heater that was like on the outside edge. It's like in the exact same spot until it's like 3 feet before him. So it looks terrible, but I'm swinging at that too. Not that I'm a more disciplined hitter than Altuve, so that doesn't exactly make a lot of sense. But Houston, the last 3 games have struck out 34% of the time, and it's just going to keep getting worse for the Astros. News a couple of days ago, Carlos Correa's out for the season, ankle surgery, and everyone was like, I knew we should have stayed away from Correa and his dodgy ankle. It was the other ankle, and he hurt it during batting practice. So I don't know, there's some kind of baseball curse that's taken a little bit too long to eventuate that's finally hitting Houston right now, and they're in a world of hurt. And outside of Yordan Alvarez, things aren't looking great. So look, Nick Lodolo is a guy I like, especially lefty on Yordan, who is the danger piece in that Astros lineup. If you look at his stats last year, he was 91st percentile chase rate. Like he's got that weird arm slot that comes in. Guys are just swinging a lot. One thing I am interested in a guy like Nick Lodolo is I was reading, don't ask, but I was reading San Francisco Giants Reddit deep analysis around Logan Webb's regression this year. In the last 2 or 3 years, Logan Webb had more balls called strikes than any pitcher in baseball, and he was actually really vocal about being against ABS. It seems to be a massive part of why he's not having the season he was having in recent years, because he's not getting ahead of counts early. And the ABS factor, he's got that late break on his fastball that has really kind of not given him the edge this year that it has in recent years. He's had a lot of pitches overturned, and he's getting behind in counts, so he has to throw clear strikes and they're getting crushed. I don't know if Lodolo is going to fall into that category, but he is someone I remember watching a lot in recent years who can nibble. With all of that said, I really want to take Nick Lodolo for 6 or more strikeouts tomorrow at 2-1 against an Astros team in a world of hurt, because he had 6 strikeouts in his rehab start through 79 pitches. So I'm expecting there's going to be no limits on him tomorrow. It was a blister that was holding him back. It wasn't, elbow or anything a bit more nefarious. If we can see 90 pitches from Lodolo against an Astros team in the shape they're in right now, I think 6 strikeouts at even money looks pretty good.
Well, it's a big explanation, and you had to drag Logan Webb through the mud during all of that.
Somebody always cops a drive-by. I swear, it's the people you least expect that are always going to cop a drive-by on one of these Spoons picks, and it's never like it would be a guy that's always 1,000 to 1. So like Webb would be sitting there going, "What the hell have I done to you?" Long bow to draw, but no, you brought it home. It's good. So 6 or more for Lodolo tomorrow against the Astros. And Spoon, because it's your birthday, it just feels like we need to go to Mets D-backs. Ryan Nelson getting the start for Arizona against, I believe, the man who started the World Championship game for the United States in the World Baseball Classic. Nolan McLean on the mound for the Mets.
Yeah, so this is just on what I kind of previewed a little bit before. Really interesting repeat matchup. The D-backs saw McLean, I think, 3 weeks ago. I know it was a Tuesday. I know it was awful to watch for 7 innings. And then all of a sudden, I think he struck out 8 or 9. D-backs hitters looked lost. Then the bullpen came in. Former D-back, former Yankee reliever Luke Weaver came in, gave up like 5 runs immediately. And you see that a lot now in baseball where the starter can dominate and look so good for a while that the hitters are just so happy to see anyone else. If you factor that into the part where the D-backs don't strike out a lot, so this McLean start a few weeks ago was an aberration. They've now seen him. The lineup's healthier. You know, you've got guys like Moreno and Gurriel in the lineup who weren't there a couple of weeks ago. I think the team total for the D-backs at 3.5 looks really low. This offense has been scuffling, but it was scuffling against a Cubs team that's clearly the best team in baseball right now. And then they had to go and run up against guys like Paul Skeens and Gregory Soto is maybe the best closer in baseball this year for the Pirates and just haven't been able to get anything going. I'm convinced this lineup is too good to be displaying the offense that they have recently. So when you factor in the upside there for the D-backs offense, the fact that they saw him a few weeks ago, and I'm not sure they're going to be chasing anywhere near as much as they were when he struck out as many as he did. I think 3.5 is really low. It's a hitter-friendly ballpark. There's a couple of guys that are, in the technical term, due. So yeah, give me 4 or more D-backs runs to celebrate a birthday weekend.
Why stop at 4, I say? If the D-backs are going to do it, let them do it. Let them run Ryan against
I promise you I won't be stopping at 4. I'm just tipping 4.
You mentioned some of those other pitching matchups that are around tomorrow. I'm just interested in what that Luzardo line would look like against Colorado. I mean, I believe that game he pitched against them a couple of weeks ago was in Colorado. This one's in Philadelphia. Is it just because that line is way too large? I mean, is it the combination of the fact that he's faced them recently and the line's just too high? Because I would have thought that Jesus will probably rack up a few tomorrow. But I mean, you might be looking at 9.5 to be able to find out.
I think there's a real chance it's going to be 7.5, and I just don't think any starting pitcher should be 7.5 at less than, you know, if you're getting 230, it's a different story. But I think he's going to be 170 at that price because he's known as that strikeout guy, but realistically, as a starting pitcher that's not on any of our 3 teams, Jesus Luzardo could be the guy we've talked about most on this show over the last few years, right?
Yeah,
like this guy gets a mention every episode, and we know him really well, and we know that for every 2 or 3 good starts, there's a shocker coming. He is rocks and diamondbacks.
Yeah.
And 4 starts ago, he gave up 12 hits to the Cubs, struck out 4 when he was facing Shota, who was brilliant. Brilliant again last night, by the way. Check that out. And he gave up 9 runs. Then he's been really good for the next 3. I think there's a shocking Jesus Luzardo start in the near future because he's just never been able to consistently be great. He's been incredible for a few and then terrible. And it's always a team like the Colorado Rockies who just pop up and put like 6 runs or 7 runs on a guy who's in the Cy Young betting that makes you go, baseball is a weird game.
And then you're staying away, I see, from Mizorowski getting that start tomorrow against Max Fried in what should be a hell of a game. Yankees and Brewers tomorrow. Is it just because you don't want to tempt fate there with Miz, or are you just happy to sit back and watch that?
Yeah, I mean, his line is 7.5, and for a guy who got pulled with injury concern, I think that's a little crazy. It's like the old horse racing black book rule of if a horse misses the start, you can't back them next start and say if they didn't miss the start, they were going to win because you want to make sure they're not going to miss the start again. So I'm staying away from that, and I might even be looking at under 7.5 there because it's really high for a guy who, there's some injury concerns. I mean, we flagged it on the Cursed pod where we were, taking hostages and not even really caring about repercussions. They are going to be careful with him in general because he's the ace of the future. You can't tell me they're letting him throw 95, 100 pitches tomorrow, no matter what, when he gets pulled mid-start, mid-AB with injury concerns, especially with Woodruff's arm dead and nothing coming out or whatever the awful quote was. I can't see him going more than 80, 85 pitches. So to give me plus money at under 7.5 is pretty tempting. And I also think you look at this Yankees lineup, they actually love hitting high velo. And a guy like Miz who dominates just because he throws gas and not taking anything away. I'm not saying he's, just a fastball thrower, and his heater is electric. I mean, Jacob deGrom went to the Bronx earlier this week, and I think he got tagged for 4 or 5 runs because they just sit fastball and they don't miss. So it won't surprise me at all if the Yankees put up a few on Miz tomorrow. The Brewers org's extra cautious, and as we're saying it right now, I think I'm going to place money on the under 7.5.
The interesting thing for me about that, and I mean, it kind of brings this whole pod full circle, is if that Spencer Jones makes his debut tomorrow against a guy like Mizorowski, who is the epitome of Rocks and Diamondbacks. I mean, we just talked about his hit grade as opposed to his power grade. If he gets a start tomorrow against a guy throwing 103 miles an hour, that might be, if Mizorowski can get through 6 innings, it might be 3 free strikeouts for Miz.
Well, what price would you give me? And I'll ask you because I'm looking at it about Spencer Jones for 2 or more total bases tomorrow.
240.
Rosie?
Yeah, something around there.
Yeah, 255. I think that makes a really interesting betting proposition because he could be up there swinging and missing 3 times and then just get a hold of one, right? Yeah. Like, you're not asking for 4 good ABs. You're asking for 3 terrible ones and one where he gets a hold of it. I mean, 255. And I love these betting opportunities when you're taking a guy who no one's seen before. I mean, he could hit 102, 450 feet tomorrow, first AB. We'll never see 255 about this guy again.
Yeah, the unknown is the unknown. That's why the markets would be high.
And where's he going to bat in the lineup, right? Is he going to be batting?
Yeah, it's a good point. You think they probably bat him farther down, but it reminds me of the UFC back in the olden times whenever these Brazilians would debut that no one's ever heard about, and they'd be 5 and 6 to 1 to win the fight. And anybody who knew anything about MMA was going, take the Brazilian, and they would win that 9 out of 10 times. So you're right. Like, all it takes is for him to get a hold of something, put it in the gap, because by the sounds of it, anytime that he does make any type of solid contact, it's either going to leave the yard or find a gap somewhere. So plenty of fun ways to play that game tomorrow.
To be fair, he's getting a fair bit of respect here from the bookmakers because Aaron Judge is $2.07 for 2 total bases. Cody Bellinger is $2.35, and then Spencer Jones is $2.55 is third. So it's more we're getting a 2 in front of it because it's Mizorowski pitching than anything else. Yeah. So he's ahead of guys like Jazz Chisholm, Paul Goldschmidt, Trent Grisham, who have big league pop and have shown that. So clearly they're factoring in, the 60 grade or 65 grade power tool here.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting watch. That one will likely be on in the lounge room tomorrow morning for me here in Australia. So just to recap the best bets for Spoon on birthday weekend, Astros and Reds, 6 or more strikeouts for Lodolo in his season debut, and Mets and Diamondbacks. Spoon just praying to the baseball gods for runs on his birthday. 4.5 is the team total line that he's going to play, but we know he's going to ladder it. It's his birthday. Guy can do whatever he wants. Well, Spoon, looking forward to the stories. I'm sorry I can't be there in South Australia, but a happy birthday to you, my friend. Have a safe, lovely weekend, and I'm looking forward to what I'm sure will be a bunch of inexplainable photographs in my very near 24 to 48 hour future.
Thank you, brother.